Hello jig tying friends, it's Andrew at Sea Run Fly and Tackle, and today I'm going to show you how to tie one of my absolute favorite jig patterns to fish under a float for salmon, steelhead, and trout. It's the UV2 Fireball Trout Bead Jig. I absolutely love this pattern. Come along for the ride, we're going to have a good time tying this one today. So here is the UV2 Trout Bead Jig. The first thing we are going to need is of course the hook, and we're going to use the Compleat angler 1/0, 1/8 ounce, white with a pink tip jig hook. Next we're going to need the Spirit River UV2 Fusion Egg Bead 6mm Fireball Orange. And what I've already done is I've used my drill with a 7/64 inch drill bit, and I've reamed out those UV2 beads so I could slide them onto the hook. And you'll want to pinch the barb down on the hook to really make sure they go on easy. You don't always have to do it, but it does make them go on a little bit easier that way. Then we're going to need our thread. Oh, it's a little blurry there, but my go-to UTC 140 Flow Pink. And I'm a big fan of the UTC 140 for all the jig tying I do and salmon steelhead flies I do. Great thread for this. Okay, so we'll start by tying our thread on, and we'll tie it on right behind those UV2 beads. We're going to cover the entire shank of that jig hook right to the barb, or where the barb was of the hook, and we'll stop there. I don't want to go down any further down the bend because it just starts to look a little bit odd that way, but keep that straight part of the shank right to where the barb is or was covered with thread. Having the thread down just will mean that the materials that we tie on next are not going to slip and slide. They'll just bite right into that thread, so that's key. So that next step is to apply Hareline UV Polar Chenille, color is UV Pearl, and we're going to make a butt with this stuff. And I am a big fan of all the different colors of the Hareline UV Polar Chenille. This material works so good in drifting jigs and twitching jigs and flies. These fibers coming off the string, they wiggle and they glow very bright in the water, and they are just a major fish attractant. So I love this UV Polar Chenille. It pretty much goes in all my drifting and twitching jigs. So we're going to tie that on right about where the barb was on the hook, just to give this jig a nice butt. Call it a glow butt, UV Pearl glow butt. And I'm going to tie this on using probably about 4 wraps, and as I'm wrapping it, I really want to make sure these fibers continue to stay flared out, and ultimately flared out and push towards the back of the jig hook. So you can use your hand to help guide those fibers as you're wrapping it on. All right, just try and stack those wraps side by side. If they overlap a little bit, that's fine, but if they do overlap, make sure they're not crushing the fibers as you're wrapping. And then just use your hand, as I mentioned, to help guide those fibers back and keep them flared out as much as possible. So I think that might have been 4 or 5 wraps there. We'll stop there. Again, just going to use my hand to help guide those fibers towards the back of the hook, and then we'll tie that down. Once it's secure, trim off the excess. And again, using my hand to pull those fibers back. I'm just going to clean up my area that we finished working on. Always good to have a clean workstation. And there you can see the UV Pearl Polar Chenille butt. It's already glowing for the camera, and it glows even more outside in UV light. And the fish love this material. So next step is to apply, again, a Hareline product. So many great Hareline products in the shop. Hareline Crazy Legs. These are hot pink fluorescent orange tip. Crazy Legs are so versatile. They come in a variety of colors. They're excellent in all sorts of different drifting jigs, twitching jigs, and fly patterns for steelhead, salmon, and trout and beyond. Show you what they look like here when they're out of the package. Here we go, so you can see them wiggling. Hot pink with the fluorescent orange tips, all right? So what I'm gonna do is just fold them in half as I have here. So these are complete strings of Crazy Legs. Now I've folded them in half. Keep my tips as even as possible. I'm just gonna cut it right in the middle. Just trim where I've cut it so they're even. And then I can take one set. I got 4 legs in my set here. So I'll take the first set and I'm just going to tie it in. On one side, and then I'm going to take the second set and I'll tie it in on the other side. So these Crazy Legs will end up wiggling at the back of the jig, creating a lot of movement, profile, and just really a great fish attractor, fish aggravator, and a really key proponent in this UV2 jig is having those Crazy Legs in there wiggling around just to draw the steelhead, salmon, and trout in. All right, so again, just clean up your work area, make it as tidy as possible. And then I'm going to grab my final material for this jig. Again, another Hareline product. This is the Hareline Crosscut Rabbit. Flesh strips, two-tone cotton candy is the color. So absolutely a great color for any jigs or flies. But my go-to for this UV2 Trout Bead Jig. I love the two-tone cotton candy strip. Solid white strip is excellent as well, and you know there's a whole variety of other ones we can play with too. But the go-to is the cotton candy. Here you go. Great color, very soft material, lots of movement to it. And when you're looking at crosscut rabbit fur, the hide is cut on an angle, so the hair will all flow to one side or the other rather than flowing straight back. So when I tie this strip on, I want to make sure that hair is flowing towards the back end of the jig rather than the front end of the jig. So we're going to tie this down. And I'm going to just fill in the gap between where we left off with the Crazy Legs and where the UV2 beads are. We'll fill that gap in with this crosscut rabbit. Probably take 2 or 3 turns. I'm going to go with 3 to really fill it in nicely. And then we can just really press that hide up against those beads there, and that locks the beads in place. So we'll now just tie this in. And that UTC 140 thread is just great for doing these jigs. You can pull on it with lots of pressure and not worry about it breaking. And it secures all these materials in so well. And again, I'm just going to clean up my area. A few more wraps of thread. Lots of movement there in that rabbit fur. Lots of wiggle with the Crazy Legs. And sparkle in the butt with that UV Pearl Polar Chenille. So now I'm just going to do my finishing knot, which I do by hand. Do it by hand. You can do it with your wet finisher, whatever works best for you. We'll tie that down. And I like to do it twice, just to know everything is super secure. So there we are. Trim that off. So the UV2 Trout Bead Jig. I love the colors. The fish love the colors. They love the movement as well. I mean, we know how well beads work on their own. We know how well jigs work. When I decided to combine the two together, it really, really impressed me how well it worked. Kind of blew my mind actually, because I had started fishing it after I had already fished with roe, and I had plastic worms out, and I was steelhead fishing. And roe and plastic worms are two of the best things to use. And I actually had fished through a run and I had not caught any fish. And I tied this trout bead jig. I got to try it out. This run looks too good not to. And I actually ended up doing quite well. I caught 2 or 3 steelhead on it, which surprised me. I continued that rest of that day using this jig, and I continued to have bites, and that doesn't always happen when you're steelhead fishing. And I've found that no matter what river I take it to, whether it's steelhead fishing, salmon fishing, and when I say salmon, I'm talking primarily coho and chinook, or bull trout fishing, rainbow trout fishing, in any of our coastal rivers throughout BC, and I'm sure you could take it elsewhere outside of BC and have it work too. I found it really is effective, and it's a really effective jig to use, behind yourself, behind other baits, whether they're artificial or natural. And it wakes fish up that may not otherwise pull your float down. So, we really want to have this jig. As I mentioned, I love these colors. They're really my favorite. I want to say my go-to, but don't hesitate to play around with the colors that you're using. This jig will work excellent with a UV pink polar chenille butt, with a crystal orange fire-tipped leg, with a solid white crosscut rabbit, with a hot pink UV2 bead, and the color combinations, really, they're endless. Never stop being creative when you're tying jigs or flies. But I would highly recommend the colors I've shown you today, as a staple, as a go-to, and fish this jig under a float. So we're going to drift it under a float. I like to have it suspended off bottom. And it could be close to bottom, but keep it suspended off bottom. It twitches itself under the float, and drift it through your favorite run, pool, pocket, and see how well it really does work for steelhead, salmon, and trout. I think you're really going to enjoy fishing it. Hopefully you're as surprised as I was by how well it works. It's one of those ones that I don't leave home without. So hopefully you like this video. Hopefully you like my jig. Please do me a favor, smash the like button for me, and make sure you follow us. Follow our YouTube channel for more great videos. There's already a lot of really great videos on there, but we have a lot more coming. Give us a like, give us a follow. Any information you need in regards to tying this jig, any of the materials you need that you don't already have, you want to purchase to tie this jig, or any jig or fly that you want, you can find all of that on our website. We got a really great website, www.sea-run.com. That's www.sea-run.com, where you can find all the materials, recipes, videos, you name it, for jigs, flies, and all sorts of great fishing information. So thanks again for watching. I really appreciate it, you guys. Good luck on the water. Good luck with the UV2 Trout Bead Jig. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it.